Hey everyone, we are live for our next session. We have Rick Burton here who'll be doing a talk on designing interfaces for managing liquidity. And I'll let him take it from here.
All right, everyone. So I'll just do a quick mic check. Sounds like everything's going well. Great. So can everyone confirm? Good to hear. And can everyone just confirm you can hear me, and then I'll get started. Just check in the chat. Great. All right. Cool. So one of the things that I think everybody's been seeing over the summer is this kind of talk of huge APYs, or annual percentage yields. And this is related to the idea of yield farming, where people are depositing capital and earning tokens in a network. And I think that probably from my perspective, I've found quite a lot of these numbers really confusing. In the real world, when you see like 0.5% APYs on your savings, you're kind of depositing dollars and just continually receiving more dollars, and like that, or like you're receiving in the native currency. And so the account in which you're placing the money for your savings is then returning new capital in the same kind of currency, and your balance is slowly growing over time. And these APYs are kind of sub 1% right now because of the way the world's working, the financial system. And one of the things that people are flooding into DeFi to do is the promise of some of these new yields. I think that one of the things that's confusing to a lot of folks when they first get into this is that you're kind of depositing one form of capital, and your yield or percentage return is in another form of capital that is itself extremely volatile. And the other problem with these kind of yield returns, and like thinking about it in terms of a percentage of money earned or return on your own capital, is that that's kind of incentivizing the users of these protocols to kind of just immediately dump these tokens and get a return, rather than committing their capital to a protocol and over time like earning money, earning a kind of percentage of the network. And so these are just some of the ideas that I've been kind of playing around. And then here are like three really, I thought, really kind of pertinent tweets about this issue. Is like, from Robert Leshner, the APY as a crude measuring stick describes if they stay constant for an entire year, but that's not true. Returns shift all the time, up and down by the second. You want to measure returns by day, by hour, by block, right, at precision. And then we've got Spencer Noon made a good point where yield farming projects that aim to maximize yield for depositors rarely address the scale of this question. It's really easy to get 100% APY or more things like that, or 1,000% APY on these tiny projects with a few 100,000 deposited. But what's the APY going to look like if you have protocols with hundreds of millions or billions in, and getting an understanding of what that would look like in a bear market too? And then I thought this was like one of my favorite tweets about this yesterday, was that some farms should not be thought of in terms of APY. Like if you're actually trying to accrue pieces of the network, or kind of have a larger percentage ownership of a network over time, then you don't want to think about it in terms of just APY and you dumping. You want to think about it in terms of increasing your ownership in a protocol. And so that's where, like, these are some of the thoughts that have been going around my head, and thinking about it, thinking about how the design could progress. So very crudely, we could present yield returns in percentage terms, like kind of hourly, daily, and weekly, monthly, kind of like Robert suggested. But one of the things we could also do is kind of construct a explanation of the meaning behind some of these numbers and allow you to tweak some of the variables. So one idea I had this morning was like this concept of, if you deposited $10,000 worth of DAI for 1 month, and the capital in the system, that is the liquidity being provided to the system, grows 5%, what could I expect to earn as a percentage of this network? So then you could kind of give broad ranges of the network tokens, and then explain what that would look like in terms of actual tokens earned. And then just like a candid explanation of the fluctuation of the value of this token over time, in kind of recent periods. and then what that would look like in terms of an APY, assuming you actually sold it over time. And this might seem like massively overdoing it, but I feel like if you're more open with your users and then actually explain some of the variables that they can tweak and how they could expect returns or what they could expect to own, then we can actually start to get towards a set of ideas that are a lot more clearer. The other thing is that there are a lot of variables going on when you're doing liquidity mining. Not only is there kind of total capital deposited, but there's also the increase each day. Sometimes these trends can look like the total capital is going up, but the actual daily deposits is going down over time as excitement around the protocol decreases. And so there's just some kind of other context that I wanted to give. And then crucially, if you're trying to highlight your network ownership, right, like what you actually think you are owning, then I think you want to kind of articulate that as an ownership amount and show that if the network's growing and capital you've deposited is constant, you're going to be owning a decreasing percentage of the network over time. And I think that would look interesting. And then the crucial thing is having some sense of what the vesting schedule is for the team. So who is getting what when, and what progress is there in that vesting. It's pretty disappointing to see that there are a lot of projects that have extremely kind of fast vesting schedules for their team, or no vesting at all. They've got these kind of community treasuries that are kind of getting loaded up pretty fast. But then sometimes the community is the people actually providing the liquidity are forced to lock it up for a while. So it's just something to consider. And so I thought I'd try playing around with a few of the designs. And I think one of the teams are doing a great job here at Barnbridge. And they've got a bunch of expected value, and they're trying to make things as clear as possible. But to really get a grip on where your kind of returns are with Barnbridge, the community has created these kind of spreadsheets that represent varying prices over time for the bond token, and then amounts of capital deposited and what you can expect to get if you deposit these amounts of capital. And so so I just threw together some other stock graphs. This is usually how I kick off a design, just to pull in some other assets from other things I've done before, and then think about what will I add and change over time. So one area that I haven't kind of had a crack at on the design is to articulate price variability and what somebody could experience in the network tokens price variability over time. And so I thought we could play with that idea. So if we kind of look at historical kind of capital trends or something like that, maybe. So it was historical price, and we had kind of 1.3 to let's say 1.4. We're giving, explaining kind of, you're showing clearly what the range of values are going to be. We can communicate kind of 50% in 30 days. Then we can look. But this, again, the goal here is just to kind of provide a set of widgets that give you context over time and help you kind of make decisions about what it is you're trying to do. And probably I would say I'm trying to focus on teams that want to have people committing capital for the long term, not just people who are looking for something kind of quick and easy, like a pump and dump. The other area that I think is important to understand is the flow of capital into and out of a liquidity program relative to your ownership. So total capital can kind of deposit or rise, but then based on the vesting schedules, you're getting kind of a different mechanic of how much I'm owning versus the other teams. And so I'm not sure this is necessarily the right kind of graph, but hopefully it starts to paint some picture that there's always money flowing in and out of these systems, and giving people some insight into that, I think, helps them understand what they're committing to, and like who's getting what based on the different rewards. The other area is I think kind of really important to think through is also that like forward-looking predicted returns, and so what would happen in different scenarios, and this I'm trying to say, like we mentioned up here, like if the capital in the system grows 500%. So I'm going to kind of take that idea and maybe add a graph on that. So let's just and it's just like quick, really rough, like live design. What happens if grows, and then we could do that, put that over there. All right, so this then we could get some sense of what people are committing to and signing up for. So say these were the bars that we wanted. And what I'm trying to highlight here is what would happen under certain scenarios. So my percentage, if the percentages would be changing. So if the capital grew 500%, then I'd be up to here. But my ownership would be dropping a lot. And I think that like these kinds of scenarios you could kind of map out. Maybe if we put that like declining over here. And just to kind of highlight that these are the future ones. And this is a forecast. You could say like, kind of highlight this up here, like forecast. Yeah, so this is like another quick idea of ways that we could help people visualize different scenarios. So, and then being able to like drag that drop down and change things. Again, just super rough and basic, but these kind of things I think can help people visualize it, or just give context to these like crazy 1000% API. So we have forecasted and yeah. Cool. So yeah, that's like, again, just another idea. And these are all just little widgets that I'd like to throw together, share with teams and discuss and help them think through, how they're going to be communicating to their liquidity providers, what people are committing to, what people are getting, and what's involved. And I hope that this is giving like a little insight into the way I kind of design things or think about things, and usually begins with sketching on paper and getting ideas from other people and then just playing around. And sometimes I'll just use stock widgets to kind of get things started, and then dive into things in a more detail. So yeah, at this point it'd be fun to cool. At this point it'd be fun to just, if anyone's got any questions, happy to like answer them and go on. Actually, I'm using Figma actually. So Figma is my favorite tool. Yeah. So there's another thing that I'd like to take a stab at, which was looking at the cost of capital or the network return, and maybe predicting, a sale value, like hypothetical sale values. So this was quite cool. So let's say you had a kind of like hypothetical. So let's just say selling on use for and this will affect your APY. Yeah. There we go. So, the goal here is to articulate different sale prices over time. So, and that would give you different prices. So, or something like that. And that these could be which would be my average. And because the real yield that you get if you are selling is the kind of total sales over time based on kind of prices that you get for the token. And not like it's not guaranteed that you get those prices, right? So it's just it's kind of there. And say this one's 4. It's super rough, just like draw variations to get like an idea together. And to see if some of that sticks, like if we can put this dashboard together and have like a few different lenses, then maybe we can make things look clearer for people. This could be, I don't know, just like a link through. This could link to like an article that will explain these things, because a lot of people are pretty confused. They're kind of jumping into these protocols, trying things out, and a lot of things are kind of new. So again, there's just a couple of ideas to giving much more context than something really crude like 1,000% would be like. I'm just going to check back to see if there are any questions. Yeah, heavy signature here. Yeah, so it's really fun doing that too. Great.
So I actually have a question.
Yes,
so
right.
when you talk about managing liquidity, are you talking about end users, or are you talking about like funds, or like which persona are you talking about and creating for?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that probably what we're seeing now is that the vast majority of these protocols are getting owned by funds who have the capital to kind of fling into these things. But we are seeing individuals as well. So that's one of the interesting things in DeFi is like these opportunities are open to anyone with an internet connection. And I think you've got to think about a set of different people. Nearly all the fund managers, I would say, have built their own spreadsheets, and they do things like this, right, where they really are building out these models. And I'm thinking more about how we could kind of present this a little bit more easily for regular people, or people who may have some experience with DeFi. I don't feel that this is a very much like a consumer activity that regular people are going to be doing. It's more like folks who are actually keen to be involved in some of these DeFi protocols.
Nice, very cool. Do you know if anyone has already created any integrations with tax software? Because I assume these liquidity providers will need to do taxes at some point. So I'm just curious if projects have started thinking about that lens for managing money as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know that Token Tax are working on it. It's also interesting, just like to speak to that. I've just been trying to dive into like what actually makes an API go, and like how you would give more detail than just a top level figure. Yeah.
Cool.
But no.
I think I see one question. How do you deal with real-time data and not making it too busy?
Yeah. That's a great question, and I don't think I honestly have the answer. I think that one of the things that's quite interesting is how much heavy lifting you have to do to actually get the data out of Ethereum. This might not be super obvious to people who are either evolved at like a higher than the technical level, but there's the Ethereum blockchain, which has like a certain amount of data, and then there's all the lenses you can use to actually look at that data. And that's like, that size of data is actually much, much larger than the Ethereum blockchain itself. And so you have projects like Graph Protocol that create these subgraphs that ingest parts of the Ethereum blockchain and present data to dApps that allow you to kind of to get towards that. At this stage of the design, or like the exploration, I'm not worrying about it being too busy or going too much. I'm just dumping a ton of ideas down and seeing if anything looks good or how it feels. When it comes to actually building a proper dashboard and information hierarchy, that's like a kind of longer process where you're looking to separate things out into where they should belong and give people like more a clear picture. But you're highlighting a really good point there that you could end up throwing too much information and it would be just as 1,000% API is a little bit too simplistic. This could end up being like way too complex.
So for the data sources for these dashboards, would they come from the internal teams or like via some API? Like, do you know any teams that have public APIs where you can pull this data or data for something to build something like this?
I would imagine the best way to do it would be combining something to do with combining something from the graph or the subgraph. But you'll probably need some custom systems to actually like create the indexes over time or like monitor these changes over time. Because you're not going to be able to query the blockchain to just like get these things. They've got to be computed based on the token price, and you're pulling in things like Uniswap pricing over time, as well as like the token distribution and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those who might not know, is this the project I'm referring there to is the graph.com. I'll just add that in. But yeah, again, usually I'll start with like the ideal state or like a bunch of designs and ideas, and then begin like chatting with engineers about what would it take to actually get this information and index it. It's another aspect that, again, many people might not appreciate about the dApps they use today, is that while the smart contracts are fully decentralized, the sources of data that feed information up to their dApps are like running on very custom servers that like can ingest information from Ethereum and present it in a clear and simple way. So there's often, when you see something that's like a really well-formed app, like a bunch of information and financial information, there's a lot of processes going on behind to actually get the correct values out of the blockchain and present those to people. So it's something I've learned a lot about, because another aspect as well is even just counting the tokens is extremely hard. Like getting token balances for all tokens in a wallet is an enormously computationally expensive thing to do.
So do you just use the graph for that, or do you run your own node to pull that information? I'm just curious. Like,
we did a bunch of things when we were. Yeah, it depends. It depends if somebody's created a subgraph for what you're looking for, or if you're able to create a subgraph yourself. And there is a lot of flexibility in that, but sometimes, certainly for things that are historical and need like kind of records over time, I believe a lot of people kind of run their own custom systems to get those as well. So yeah, there's a lot to explore for sure.
Very cool. Does anyone have any last questions?
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll wrap it up there, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully this is interesting, like exploration of my weird brain, and fun. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, Rick, this was great. Thank you so much. All right, bye.